Hello. Happy New Year and really lovely to have you join us. Um, just as a reminder, and for new members of the group, I'm Yoni Ejo and I'm an adopted person and I'm an adopter of two beautiful, strong personality teenage girls. And this is Keeley Craw, her play therapist, who's going to introduce herself as well.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, hi, I'm Keeley. I've been a play therapist for rolling on 14 years now. I'm a mum of two myself, and a lot of my work in therapy has involved working with children who've been identified at risk. They might be in kinship care, or they may be in placed with foster or adopted parents as well. So, as well as supporting the children through the play therapy, often in my roles, I've also supported the parents too, which I've really enjoyed actually. So, it's great that we can um, do this and have that opportunity to give you some support too.
Great. Thank you, Keeley. I myself professionally am a social worker. I've been a social worker and manager for 30 years, mostly working with children in care and foster carers and adopters. And why I started Diversity Adopt and also very much working with Keeley is because it became clear to me that it was really important that adopters and foster carers had better information, really, and more accessible information about children and caring for children. And I didn't really feel, even though I've been part of agencies, that adopters and foster carers were that well served in terms of training and advice as part of the assessment process. So that was my intention, and diversity and inclusion is always a really important thing for me. Um, so just uh, to start off, it would be great if people would be, let us know that you're out there and maybe where you're from, and if you are currently adopting or in assessment. And also, could you click on the StreamYard link if you're making comments, just so that we can see who it is. Um, so today we've done a few surveys and consultations with adopters and foster carers, and one of the things they always want to talk about is attachment. And so Keely and I wanted to really explore that in a bit more depth. Um, so yeah, do you want to take it away in terms of what's
Um,
attachment?
we'll get the ball rolling here.
Yeah, let's.
So I'll start with just a bit of an outline of what attachment is, because I know some parents who come here might just be in the process of adoption, so this information might be more new, and then um, we'll just try and add some extra layers to that. So a bond is a connection that a parent makes to a baby or a child, but an attachment is the connection the baby or child makes to the parent. And attachment behaviors are activated in times of stress. So for a baby, that could be that they're hungry, they've got a dirty nappy, they're feeling alone. And the baby's aim, because it's just key to the survival and to a child, because they can't do those things without an adult, is to seek and to keep the proximity to a parent. They need to keep that primary caregiver close. And so they have to, when an attachment is disorganized, the child often has to change their responses to get the proximity they need. In a secure attachment, a baby would cry, and the parent, the primary caregiver, would very quickly go and kind of recognize or work out what the child or the baby wanted, and they would meet that need. And the way that the stresses are responded to, the stresses responded to shapes the way the child then develops that perception of themselves and the others around them. So Winnicott very famously says, and it's slightly paraphrased, but he says the mother is the mirror. And that means that the way a baby or a child is responded to shapes the way they perceive themselves, that their idea of worth, their kind of value, if they're a good or a bad person. Already that kind of starts from the way, and Winnicott says the mother, because that's all he worked with was mothers, but equally, if the primary caregiver was a father, it would be the father. It's whoever that baby or child has like the most contact with, receives the most care from. So the children are shaped by that, but those behaviours actually, when you think about it, only become problematic when they maybe are used outside of the family and they don't work. That actually, it might be an absolutely chaotic strategy or a difficult strategy or a damaging strategy, but within that kind of interaction with the primary caregivers, it works. But when that child starts to go to nursery or elsewhere, or they're removed from home and they're put into foster placements, those strategies that the children have used when they're hungry, when they're stressed, when they feel lonely, when they want comfort. And remember, some of this is subconscious for the child too. They're not often thinking, I really feel like I need some comfort right now. There's just that feeling. The ways that they try to seek that then actually become problematic because they don't, they're not appropriate and they don't work, and that's what then can become challenging, especially when people bring children into their families, whether they're foster or adopted children. So there's 4 types of attachment. The first is a secure attachment. So that's what we're all aiming to to achieve. And when a secure attachment's achieved, a child's able to trust. As they get older, they're able to self-soothe because they're being taught by their primary caregivers. And as they get older, other people continue those strategies. And a lot of the way that the taught self-soothe is being held. It's being spoken to with appropriate tone of voice. So when they're sad, we change our voice, we change our body language. When they're excited, we can respond to that as well. So they're learning how to soothe and comfort themselves because we've given that to them. They feel confident in themselves. Say you were, back in the day at a party or at the park, wasn't it, with a group of friends, and they wanted to go off with some other friends. A child with a secure attachment locks to that parent first to make sure, and then once they've got the approval, quite happily runs off and goes to play. And then the next 3 attachment styles are actually kind of like the disorganized, the unsecure attachment. So the first is avoidant attachment, and that might kind of stem from where children are being parented by very angry parents, where the parents can be frightening, where their needs haven't been met, or they've been met with anger or frustration, where their emotions haven't been allowed to be expressed, so that means that they end up being quite repressed emotionally. They wouldn't want to kind of show the feelings. They feel that kind of closeness or intimacy in a relationship, so it's quite hard to kind of get in there. They'll be very independent, and they will struggle to trust others. Emotions are just a real minefield for them, and they're really just kind of staying away from that. An anxious attachment style comes from a kind of ambivalent parenting. So that's really where a child doesn't know where they stand. So the goalposts are shifting all the time. So, one day the child might go and ask for a biscuit and they get it, no problem. Another day they make exactly the same request and they're met, with anger or frustration, or, something's changed. And this, once or twice, that might be right, but this is happening like repeatedly, and it makes a real anxious child, and so because they don't know how to. They're thinking, how do I keep this adult close to me? And they
Yeah.
can't trust that the adult will always be close. Sometimes they might, and sometimes those adults can be they demand a lot of attention and closeness from the children, and then other times they can be quite rejecting as well. So that
I know I've worked with a lot of families where perhaps depression or mental health issues have been prevalent in the primary carer, and that's very reflective of how they parent, how some people in that situation when they're very poorly parent.
Yeah, but because they'll be in different states of mind and different kind of levels of, how capable they can be parenting. And I would say probably, maybe also for parents who were heavy dependents on drug or alcohol as well, depending on kind of where they are, that can kind of lead to some ambivalent parenting style too. And those children can be really clingy, unable to trust that others will stay, very prolonged distress during separation, because it's quite natural for a child to show upset, even within a secure attachment, when a parent goes away, but they're able to take comfort of another. So if a child starts to go to nursery, they'll be upset, but maybe after like 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes or something, the nursery staff have calmed them down and they can kind of get on and enjoy the day. These children just find it very distressing, and that kind of distress can kind of go on for a long time. And also with these children, it's about being unable to make choices because, all the time the goalposts are shifting. How do they possibly, they can't mind read. How do they possibly know that they're making the right choice? And I guess there's also within that, they're not making often like the choice that suits them. They're having to kind of think about what is the best choice to appease the caregiver. And that just kind of spreads out, in all their kind of situations in life, how to make the right choice. And then the last is disorganized attachment, and you can get combinations of these. So you can be anxious avoidant or disorganized anxious. And they're really, this is like where you're really kind of hitting children who are being physically, sexually abused, particularly, and the parents are a real source of fear. But what actually happens, that they're afraid of the parents, but actually what they actually do is they internalize in the sense of their own self that they're the bad one. But also they can be really charming. And in order to gain proximity to other adults, they need to be, because their parents might not be feeding them, meeting the needs. So they have to be charming, right? They have to know what to do to try and survive, and a lack of boundaries on self and others. I remember a long time ago, I was a family worker in a school, and I was just I met a boy for the first time. He was about 9, and we were sat just in the school library doing a little questionnaire together. And the next minute, he's flashing his top up at me to show me like the scar from the heart operation he had as a baby. An absolute just lack of boundary. No kind of protection for himself or. So that's an example. Just those lack of boundaries around themselves and others, because they don't understand. Everything's been so chaotic. There's been really no kind of rule. It's just been very chaotic, and that can lead to disorganized attachment. So they're your kind of main styles.
Right. So, do you think? I think when people talk about attachment, we often talk about it as if it's very fixed, and I know to some extent it is, but there is hope, isn't there, in terms of how children can relearn.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think also, with neuroscience now, it's shown that the plasticity of the brain, and what that means is that kind of that ability for the brain to adapt and manage and start to learn new ways. And the more they're exposed to the good stuff, the less of that bad stuff kind of comes into play. So there is hope. It just takes a bit longer sometimes. To kind of get that. Especially as the children may be older and they've been exposed to kind of more trauma or, very kind of distressing events. They've got a lot more to work through, but absolutely, if they're placed in the right environment, and that investment is put into the children, absolutely they can make big changes.
And I know we've talked a lot about play being very fundamental and that one-to-one support. Are there other things that we haven't talked about that can help build attachment, do you think?
Mm-hmm. I think, play is really great, but you can't be playing all day. And I think the main thing is, you can be playful. You can put a lot of just playful moments in the day, but I think it's about, the overarching thing, isn't it, is that you're trying to provide a secure, an example of what a secure attachment looks and feels like. You're trying to be that the parents that they can securely attach to, so they've got that sense, of what it feels like, and that means responding to the child's physical and emotional needs, and that is about being consistent, about showing warmth, accepting the children where they are, when they're upset, kind of acknowledging that and kind of managing that, sensitively, as well as all, the 3 meals a day, a nice clean bedroom, things like that. It's about the emotional stuff too. And I guess within each attachment style, some children they need other kind of things that they didn't have before. So a child with an avoidant style, they all require consistency, to be honest, but they need some kind of consistency to know that they can trust you, and open emotion and policy. And I guess what I mean by that is that it's it's okay to have feelings and to express them. Now you might not want them to be like hitting you, if they're angry and stuff, but I think it's always important to say, it's okay if you feel angry. I'm not I don't, I'm not here to be hit, but it's okay to have a feeling and then to find another way, maybe channeling, if it was angry, feeling in that moment to kind of support them with it. And for children like that, it's going to take a long time to gain their trust and to make the connections. Often, I found that the children who were avoidant were often pseudo mature as well, and that maybe they were the ones who had to care for the parents or for younger siblings. So they look very grown up and they look like they've got it all sorted and stuff, but actually, they really had to kind of squash their own emotions and feelings down because they're trying to take care of others. And so it's quite hard for them to kind of relinquish that control over to another adult because they're so used to kind of playing that role.
I've worked with foster carers who are caring for siblings where the oldest one has been the primary caregiver. And it's quite a challenge because the natural inclination for the carer is to say, well, that's no longer your role. But actually, it's been so much part of their life that sometimes you have to introduce that gradually and perhaps do it together. And it can be quite challenging for carers to manage. And also young carers have difficult times in care because they've been so self-determined.
Yeah, it's almost like a weaning process. It's not something you can, it's a bit like a dummy, isn't it? It's not, they're so used to it. It's not something you can take off them just straight away and say, like, I'm the adult now, you don't need to do that. It's just about finding ways of thinking, well, I'll do that bit and you can do that bit, and trying to kind of negotiate. And there's that kind of relationship develops, and they can maybe kind of relax a bit more into the relationship with you and being at home with you. Then maybe they're more able just to kind of relax and just kind of be more more appropriate to their age and kind of give that parental kind of responsibility to you.
So I guess I'm wondering, are there particular things that would be helpful for a carer when they're thinking about their particular child and what kind of attachment style they might have. I mean, I suppose I'm thinking things like learning about their history would be really helpful, talking to the social worker. I just wonder whether you had any other thoughts about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of to kind of go into the history and try to put yourself in them in their shoes and kind of think, what must it have been like to be this child? You know, what was, if I was this child, how would I experience this parent? Will give you a lot of clues on kind of maybe how they are. If you're going into adopt a child, then maybe also like speaking to the foster carers too, if they're in foster care, just to kind of talk about kind of what the children respond well to, what they don't kind of respond well to, just to kind of get a good picture of them. And then just to try and do some research. I mean, always in these categories, they're quite fixed, but everyone's an individual, and they'll come maybe a bit more. Maybe they're a bit more avoidant, a bit more this.
Yeah.
They've got their own kind of things, and children got their own temperaments as well. So you've got to kind of factor that in as well, and all their experiences that they've had. So this is just like it's a gauge really, but I guess in some ways it's a crude gauge. Part of it is just learning about your own child or the children that you're going to bring into your family. Before you do that, or maybe you've had children with you before, and it's just about revisiting. Sorry, you've had your children with you for a while, and it's just about revisiting that and thinking again and thinking, what is it? So, if your child's anxious, they require consistency. They might need to talk plans out a lot before they happen. You might need to have to preempt quite a lot of stuff. They're probably going to need lots of comfort because they don't know how to soothe themselves. So you're going to have to start teaching them that. The acknowledgement of emotions, helping them to kind of develop new strategies. So it's thinking all the time about what is it that this child needs. They lived in a chaotic, household before. They moved from household to household. I've met plenty of children who they'll live with a parent and then something happens and they go and like without social services knowledge, go and like live with a neighbour or something, for a couple of weeks. They just pass pillar to post, and it's really hard. So it's just thinking about what can I do to kind of fill in those big gaps that are missing. Where it's been chaotic, where can I bring consistency? Where they've not had trust, where can I show my trust? I'll not make a promise I don't think I can fulfill. Things like that.
Nice.
So you shouldn't ask you something like, can I have this? Really think about, actually, can I fulfill that promise? If they want it today, have I got time in my day to fulfill that promise? So make it really reliable and trustworthy. Things like that are what help, and plenty of play.
Plenty of play. Well, talking of which, just to let you all know that we're building on some of these themes for a play challenge, which we're really very excited about bringing you. And that's going to be on Tuesday the 2nd and Thursday the 4th of February. And we're going to do some activities. Maybe, Keeley, if you just want to briefly give a bit of an idea in a second. But what we're looking to do is really significantly give you a chance to practice some of the skills that will significantly increase your relationship with your child, help you feel closer, building relationships with your child, and also having fun and investing just a little bit of time, even 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there. And anyone who engages live will have an opportunity to, if you come on both days and engage with us, then you'll have an opportunity to win the A to Z of Therapeutic Parenting by Sarah Naish, which is one of I think my top recommended books. I know she's an adopter, and she also is a therapist, and used all her experiences and as a multiple adopter to inform other adopters of strategies that are really helpful. So yeah, clearly, if you want to say a couple of words just before we finish up.
We're just trying to really, I guess, kind of follow on from before. In the latter half of 2020, Yoni and I did lots of live sessions around play and the importance of play, and this now is really just to give you an opportunity just to kind of dip your toe in the water and to start trying to create some kind of play sessions with your children. So look at different types of kind of play. All we're asking is over 7 days that you just try and play with your child for three, make 3 play sessions, and we've kind of created themes around that to kind of help you out a little bit, and then just spend a little bit of time after kind of reflecting, kind of what went well with that activity, what would I do differently next time with it, just to start having kind of think about play and be reflecting on it. And then of course we have our longer course, which then we can really go much more into depth about kind of supporting you with the areas that you'd like to strengthen up on.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. That's been so interesting, Keeley. I think that's really, really helpful. So please, if you're watching on replay, put some comments in your thoughts about attachment and any of your takeaways, what you thought, something that perhaps you didn't already know. And we really look forward to seeing you in the next live session. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye, folks.